often are more, oh, thank you for recording. People find that these issues a lot of times are more important than they initially thought. I know for me, when I first did a priority grid and I thought, okay, well, my most important things are my family and making money and these different things. And then it turned out like social justice and the environment were third or fourth in importance to me. So I think it's really cool to be able to show your values and so forth. There's really no other place on LinkedIn to talk about that. So enough about that. Let's go back to, oh, and I just want to do a shout out for Rob because I have been using this cool thing. It's called Toby, and it's kind of your homepage and it aggregates your links for you. So in the past, when I would do a startup, kind of my action stack for getting started in the morning, I would just pin a bunch of tabs, and when the browser would open up, my tabs would be pinned, but you couldn't really see what they were. They were just a bunch of small little tabs at the top of the page. So now, as you can see right here, I've got, am I still sharing? I am still sharing. Okay. As you can see, I've got all my startup, YouTube music. Okay, I admit it. But I've got all my startup stuff right here, and it's just super easy. Instead of having to go looking for a link, everything I need is right there. So
so you just click that link to the right and you open all of those tabs at once, right?
Yeah. Or, if you're trying to not do social media so much, you can, you can delete it or move it down into I've got a whole bunch of different startup routines. So I'm doing some work with Mike from Owner Insider, and he's got his own palette down below that just has all his pages. And so it's really cool to be able to aggregate all that into like one session. And so, all right, so I'm going to go right to my LinkedIn profile. Yippee-yi-yay. So the first thing that I was graded down for, all right, get out of the way. There you go. The first thing I was graded down for was my banner. So I've been working a lot on that. I had a banner that was black and green, and I got a lot of compliments on it being cool. But BJ, the fellow in Australia, said, well, it's cool, but it doesn't tell anybody why they should work with you. So I looked at a lot of different headers. One of the headers that I really liked was Phil Gerbishak's header, because it's super colorful and it just tells you exactly what he does and how he does it and so forth. So one of the things I asked BJ was, I said, should I tell people that I've been in business for 40 years? This is like, should I telegraph my age? And he said, well, you're a consultant, right? Right. He said, would you rather work with a 20-year-old consultant or a 60-year-old consultant? I'm like, 60-year-old. And he's like, all right, be proud, put it in there. So I'm not even going to fudge how long I've been working in the industry, 40 years. What do? I help print companies grow and thrive. Here's the 3 categories of work that I generally market to print CEOs. And then I've got a little action thing for my next sprint. And he said, you really need to be talking to the level that in the hierarchy of whom you're marketing to. You need to message to that person and a layer above, because a lot of times either the funding for what you're doing is going to come from a layer above, or if you are validated by someone a layer above, the person you're speaking to will be more likely to believe you. So for me, print CEOs is who I market to. And then a layer above print CEOs, to me, from my work with them, tends to be their colleagues. They're the ones that they're most influenced by. So if I can either, this sounds gross, but if I can either shame them into working with me or, guilt them or whatever. I mean, I hate to say it, but manufacturing CEOs aren't motivated by much more than that. So, so I have a lot of like that FOMO, fear of missing out, messaging in my profile for that reason. So he did not like my photo. He said it looked old-fashioned. He wants me to get a new photo, and this photo is altered to be more grainy and red for a reason. I have the original, which has a lot more clarity to it, but I look really mean in it, so I tend not to use it. But the other thing is I'm very active on Twitter, and if you have a standard photo, it doesn't really stand out in the thread. So I'll probably change this, and then I'll gussy up the one for Twitter. I like some alignment between my social channels so people can find me and know it's me, but it doesn't have to be to this extent. But anyway, he thought that looked old-fashioned. So then the next thing, so I would really work on the banner, just getting back to the banner. And if you're not an artist, and I'm not, I just use Canva, and they have an actual template that you can use for this, which is perfect because it's a super unusual size to try to design for. And it'll also let you know where your head is going to go, so you can design around that. But I'm a pretty big fan of Canva. So then down here with the headline, there's two elements here to having a good headline. One is obviously that you're talking to your target market, but also this is how LinkedIn knows what kind of traffic to send you. And I'm really serious about LinkedIn sending you traffic. They want to please you. They want you to be successful. They're going to try and match you up with the searches that people are looking for based on the words that you put in here. So if you're overly clever or too obtuse, if you don't really make it clear who you're marketing to, you're going to get a lot of false returns. And you can see that when you're checking to see who's looked at your profile. You're like, why is a banker looking at my profile? Or why is IBM in China looking at my profile? So I'm not doing a good enough job of describing who I'd like to work with. So I've got, what I do. And even this isn't that necessary, because nobody, when they go up here to search for me, nobody's looking for a marketing strategist. You really want to define the results that your target market is looking for in their words. Rarely is someone going to type in marketing strategist unless they're my competitor or something. Most of the time when someone's looking for me, they're having a problem with sales, or they're having a major problem with morale around their messaging. Things are not going well, and they need, they're not sure if they need marketing. They're not really sure. So, but anyway, I define myself as marketing strategist, so I'm keeping that in there for now. The sunflower is part of how I describe what I do, so I'm leaving that for now as well. The printing industry, and I always have people ask, well, do you do work for any other industry? And it's like, yeah, pretty much every industry, but again, trying to keep that narrow so that LinkedIn will send me the right traffic. I am the co-host of Print Chat, which I do get a lot of connections from that. I wouldn't say I get a lot of business. So at this point, I'm leaving it in. And BJ had said, like, get rid of all of this. So I'm still a little too connected to it. And then I help print CEOs, print CEOs make an impact and build their career legacy. So, I don't think this is great. I'm still kind of working on it, but I think I'm doing better at talking to who I'm supposed to be talking to. So when he and I went through, one of the things we spent the most time on was this about category. And he said, this is really, this is your sales process revealed. So anybody who opens this wants to know what exactly you do, what your process is, what your results are, who has validated that, and what are the next steps. And I've rewritten this since early December. I've rewritten this probably 50 times. For one thing, you have a certain number of characters, and I'm totally verbose. So I keep thinking, well, this surely someone would care about this. No, they really don't. What they care about is, do I understand who they are? Do I understand what their problems are? Can I fix those problems? Does somebody other than me say that that's true? So I've tried to include all that in here as succinctly as possible. And on the 11th, BJ will tell me if I did a good job or not, but I've got some testimonials. I describe my process to some extent. I describe my results in terms more than just people being excited about it, but in real tangible terms. He wanted me to take my background out, and the only reason I kept it in is in the printing industry. Not a lot of CEOs, at least of a certain age, have a degree. Many of them started their own companies when they were right out of high school, or maybe have a degree that's not related to print. Maybe they went to college and then came back and worked in their family's printing company or whatever. So I do get a lot of good feedback when I'm talking with the CEO. If they find out that I went to the University of Michigan, they like that I have a degree. They like that it's from a credible place. They like that I grew up in a print publishing family, because to them, that is validation. And usually they can relate to that. And they like that I've been the boss at various places. And so for now, I'm going to leave that in there, because that is a point of validity for dealing with my target market. And then BJ just recommended, for the last thing, what the next steps are. He said, don't make people go to your calendar. Don't make people call you. None of that stuff. They're on LinkedIn. Just encourage them to message you here on LinkedIn. Don't even ask them to connect with you. They don't have to. They could message you for free. So just tell them, message us, and we'll get started. And I said, well, should I, how polite should I be with that? Because to me, this seems like very presumptive to say, message me and we'll get started, instead of message me and let's have a conversation or whatever. And he's like, no, you're the boss of this situation. You're running this show. You want people as clients who are going to cooperate with you. So that's a good filter right there, which is, if you're serious, Mr. Prospect or Ms. Prospect, message me and we'll get started, whether that is getting started in the process of seeing if we should work together or get started and actually start working. But he wants you to kind of take control. So this next section, I think people understand this pretty well. You can put in all kinds of media, or you can put links in this featured section. And I would encourage you you can fill this as much as you want. It basically goes on a carousel, so someone can hit the right arrow and really get a pretty good feel for you. I've cut mine back significantly because I'm really only talking to CEOs, so I'm only using the links that confirm that that's who I'm speaking to. And then I have one of my clients, so I think that makes me look kind of cool, maybe, I don't know. But I have 3 articles that talk to CEOs. And if anybody wants to stop and pop some stuff in or wants me to slow down, just let me know if I'm going too fast. Okay, as far as activities, when I went back and rewatched Rob and Chris's LinkedIn presentations, a lot of their focus is around how you attract people or you present yourself through your activity. And that clearly is like the, 90% of what you're going to be doing, which is how you're portraying yourself is really important. for who you're going to attract. The thing is, LinkedIn, like almost all the social platforms, doesn't push everything to everybody. And my friend Deborah, that's her picture right there. We've done a lot of experimenting where we'll post something and we ask people, hey, tell us how long it took you for this post to show up in your feed. And for LinkedIn, it can be about, I would say, 4 to 7 days before something that it's like, why would it take so long? But because LinkedIn wants engagement, they're going to kind of slowly flow it out to people. And so you might have a post that is very timely, and a week later, people are still kind of dribbling in and making comments. So that's great for LinkedIn. It's not great for us. So I've found increasingly that activity has to be a little bit more generic. It can be more positioning and less like a true status update. And really, probably the best activity I've found is to comment on other people's posts and on their replies, rather than expecting that anyone will drift over and look at what you're posting. Because if you're commenting on someone else, they're going to get notified. So that means immediacy. It's obviously a way to interact specifically with the person that, is on your list. And also, for example, let's say, so I really love Dory Clark, and I try not to be a stalker, because she's probably like, gosh, why is this woman like commenting on everything? So one way to not be a stalker, but I'm always looking at her stuff anyway, is maybe comment on something that someone else has said to her, or just get a little bit farther outside that circle. And so she'll still get notified that you've made a comment in her post, but, it's not just always on her, always on her. And, to be perfectly honest, it's strategic to be connected with the kind of the infrastructure around the person that you're interested in anyway. So, if a print CEO, for example, posted something about a piece of equipment, and let's say the press manufacturer said, oh, congratulations, we're so happy you bought our machine, I probably would comment on the press manufacturer's comment instead of the CEO's comment. And human nature being what it is, people are kind of paranoid. I think it's probably more strategic anyway. So then down here, one of the things that I never occurred to me all these years, and I've been on LinkedIn since 2007, which is to create my own company on LinkedIn, and my own company being me. So basically, I created a company called Sandy Hubbard Marketing Strategy, and it's not, I haven't posted anything there. I probably could. I don't see any traffic over there, but what it allows you to do is, instead of having like the weird little gray graphic here, now it has my picture, or I could put a graphic in there or whatever. But the other thing it allows me to do is nest underneath it all the different iterations of my business, or the different aspects of my business. And I know that that's something that through our conversations, both at AHB, Association of Home Businesses, and Owner Insider, when we talk about, well, I have 3 really big money-making parts of my business. How do I, not scare someone off by talking about this one aspect, or how do I express to people that I have these multifaceted elements of my business? And one of the, like I think about Cindy with her business, and she's got, like a teaching element and an art creation element, and her public speaking element. And you don't want to turn anyone off and say, like, you want to let people know, yes, I am available for public speaking, or yes, I am available to work on a commissioned piece for you. And yes, I am available to teach a class for your group. So instead of trying to cobble all that together in one header, you can have these different areas. So, so I've got the top one here. I have my moneymaker, which is a class. And then the next one would be my consulting work. And then the third one would be my ghostwriting. And then the fourth would be my, I do a lot of work building communities for people. And then I have a free thing that I do where I travel around the country and I meet with printing companies and I help them go out into their communities and get people to love print. And so I kind of don't want to intertwine that with anything else, but I do a lot of speaking around that. So it has to have its own category. And then my client asked me to, and this is concurrent with all of this, but my client asked me if I would present myself as one of his consultants on my profile. I'm like, yes, I would be honored. And he has me on his website and so forth. So I have that concurrent, showing some credibility, maybe, I don't know. And then I also created, because my former job, I was laid off when they closed my division. They closed a bunch of publishing divisions at the same time. So I just went ahead and did the same thing. I created a company for it, created a logo in Canva, popped it up there. And so now I run this LinkedIn company page, which is my former company. And I said, is it okay if I do this? And they're like, yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. So do whatever you want. So basically, I just explained what the magazine used to be like and that I was the publisher. And then a couple more things. There's my AHB. Hello, AHB people. And I used to run a training center. So I threw that in there. I might take that out. So anyway, what BJ said was, this should be like three things. It should be your current business and its iterations, your past job if it's relevant, and something that gives you credibility. So I know he's going to want me to take out probably half of those things. He said, it's just like when you're trying to sell somebody something, if you give them too many things to think about, they'll select themselves out. Whereas if you just give them the nuggets that it's like those menus in Cheesecake Factory, which is like 50 pages, you have like decision paralysis. So you don't want to give anybody a reason to not choose you. You're just going to lay out the things that are persuasive for them to choose you. And, I just have to admit, I have a lot of affection for my career, and I don't like taking things off of here. I just have to be realistic that this is a sales tool. It's not a reflection of my life. And it's okay to take stuff off. And, if for some reason I change my mind later, I can put it back in. But I feel like I have to give this process a chance to work. And really, there's a lot to be said for not overwhelming people with evidence. So I feel like the best evidence for anyone is to just get on a phone call with me. Once we have a phone call, they're like, oh yeah, you seem good and let's move forward. So having all this stuff in here potentially is an impediment. Again, with my education, he's like, this is just too much stuff. Just take it all out. Does anyone care that you're in the honors college? No, just take it out. I can say I graduated good enough. Same with my Stanford stuff. He didn't think it was all that interesting, and the same with some of my certification programs. He's like, just keep it simple. This section he's really hot about. He said, what do people care about right now with COVID? And, if you're going to hire a independent contractor or a consultant or a freelancer or someone on a temporary basis, you want to know, do they know stuff, modern stuff? I don't care what your degree was 40 years ago. Do you have any evidence that you know what you're talking about now? So he feels like current certifications are really very good indicators that not only are you keeping up on your career, but that you have current relevant skills. So And I think the only other one that I included on there was a boot camp that I took with Danny Eny because it was super intense. And let's see, where was I going with that? Super relevant. I lost my train of thought. Oh, and then the other thing that people really want to know is, will you do what you say you're going to do and follow through in this very tumultuous environment right now? So I think some of the indicators when you show current certifications and so forth, is like, yes, I was in time of COVID able to take a class, follow through, get certified. And even if that doesn't occur to people consciously, I think on a subconscious basis, they're like, oh, she's still rolling along. She still has clients and she's still kicking ass. So that also goes to, I'm going to skip past volunteer experience here because.
Hey, Sandy.
Yeah.
How did you differentiate the licensing and certification versus putting it in the education section? Because I wasn't sure if this human behavior marketing is a class.
They're all classes, but they issue certificates.
I see.
And so one of the nice things about this section, as a reader, you can click on something and it'll go right to the certificate. So yes, you could put it in the education section. I think the other issue is that, again, you want to fill out sections that LinkedIn will reward you for participating in. And so even if you just have a couple actual certificates here, LinkedIn will go, she's trying to fill out the sections and we're going to reward her for current behavior. So I think it could go in either place, but I would definitely find at least 2 certified things to show here that if someone clicked on it, it would show your certificate of completion from a reputable party.
So that's validated by the organization?
Right.
When you enter that information, they validated that for you?
Yeah, I don't know if I can do it as the user. Let me see if I can click on that. That one didn't. Normally there's a, now I've done it. Normally there's a place that you can enter your certificate number and then that just resides right there. Yeah.
But it's sort of what I'm thinking about is, so, there's certain certifications that I've received over the years that, predate LinkedIn, for crying out loud, or but still might be relevant in some way, shape, or form, or they may not have electronic certification or a credentialing URL or a credential ID.
If they have a LinkedIn presence and you don't have an actual certificate number or something that links to a asset, you can link to their LinkedIn company or profile or whatever, and that will be acceptable.
Okay.
And then if not, I think in the past, what I've done is I've taken a screenshot or, I've gotten a shot of my certificate and I've added that as an asset. In these cases, it didn't matter, but I'm pretty sure that you can add media to show that. This section has changed quite a bit, and it might be because people had that very same feedback, which was, this isn't a digital asset that I can just pop in here. Because in the past, it had to actually be a certificate number, but I think it's evolving. And if not, like Anna said, you can just move it up into your education section and then add the media to it.
Cool.
And so then, again, like all this PTA stuff, I'm super proud of it, but like, does anyone care? I doubt it. So another question that people always ask about down here in the skills and endorsement section is how important is this? What purpose does this serve? Is this just a popularity contest? Yes, it is a popularity contest. And when this feature first came out, my friends and I just ran as fast as we could to try and max it out. It stopped showing after 99. We were like, you know, every category, we wanted the full 99 endorsement so it would look like we were experts in all these different things. So one of the things that I didn't think to put on there was printing industry. So like no one's ever endorsed me for that. But again, I want to send that message to LinkedIn that I'm an expert in that. So hopefully I'll get a couple of pluses on that. But one of the things I find most useful about this, well, two things. The first is I would definitely add some items that your friends who've never worked with you could confidently link on or click on. So for example, you know, I'm connected to a lot of friends here. Nobody knows if I'm competent in marketing strategy or email marketing. They might go ahead and click on it to be nice, but in general, people don't like to do that. So I've just added some things that are, you know, like I have a good sense of humor and I'm easy to work with. And I've added some of those, and that might seem kind of dorky, but my friends can confidently click on that. And you're like, well, does that even matter to a prospect? No, it really doesn't. But what it does is it allows your network to feel important by helping you. And I think that's really you know, there aren't very many interactive elements on your profile for people to tell you that they like you and they think you're doing a good job. So when you have a place like this where you can put something that allows people to interact with you on a pretty low risk level, it's just nice to do that. And then of course the reciprocal elements of human personality, which is I'm pretty much more likely to go over and do the same for them. Now, if you know all they have is like expert in C++, and I'm like, I don't know if that's true. So I think they also should have a category that's, you know, like they're very reliable and they've never missed a deadline or any of the things that I might be familiar with that I can click on for them. So, you know, and again, Sandy being Sandy, I went ahead and filled every skill category. You can do 50 skills. I filled them all. Well, one of the things that happens if you do that is LinkedIn will tell you what it thinks you're good at based on how people interact with you and what they click on and kind of what the trending keywords are for what you do. And so I went through and I probably deleted 10 skills. And again, it just killed me because it's like, well, 99 people said I was good at that. I don't want to take that away. But then I asked LinkedIn, well, what do you think I'm good at? And so then it made 10 recommendations, and they were the keywords that are uptrending right now. And I was like, wow, this is why you want the algorithm working on your behalf, because the words it suggested were ones that I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And that's me and I'm good at that. And it never occurred to me because either they're words on the forefront of new trends or they're areas that I don't focus on very much. But because the algorithm said, this is what people are searching for and it seems to match what you do, would you like to add this as a skill? And I'm like, you bet, click, click, click. So I would encourage you to let LinkedIn recommend some skills for you and then just lay them out there. If no one clicks on them, fine. But I like to reward the machine for trying to make me better. So. And then the other thing that BJ recommended, he said, you know, again, during this COVID time, nobody knows if you've been working. Nobody knows if you have been working, if you've been doing a good job. He said, you really need some recommendations that have been dated in the last year and a half. And so I went back to some of my old people that gave me recommendations a long time ago and said, could you just update this for right now so that it will show as current? And I'm like, I don't know if you can tell this, but I'm a shy person. I would never presume to ask for someone to give me a recommendation. So that's why I went back and asked people who'd already done it to just update it. I can't think of anyone I've ever asked. Maybe I have, but it just seems mortifying to me to ask for recommendations. Anyway, but BJ's like, well, you know, the best people who would give you the best recommendations, you really need to get that on there. I'm like, I'm going to deal with that later. That have a hard time with that. So, but again, having it at least be current. And he also said, I have, like, people really have these long gushing things. He said, stuff like this, people just won't read it. It's really long. That's a long recommendation. He said the ones that people read are like two, he said this one, you know, 2 or 3 lines. So, you know, we don't ever want to tell people, oh, could you write a recommendation and only make it 3 lines? But one of the things that you can do is you can kind of give them a reminder of what you think they've appreciated about you, and just say, you know, I feel like you appreciate that I get you through the maze. And then when they write it, they can focus on that. So
if I can jump in for a
Yeah.
second, I totally understand the reluctance around asking for that, but the results of asking for that have always been, people are so genuinely happy because the people you're going to ask have been impacted positively by this. So their willingness, I'm always surprised at people's willingness to just jump right on it and write a recommendation. And to your point about the length, you can prime them a little bit and say, I only need, you know, a short paragraph, 3 or 4 sentences is plenty. You know, a lot of people ask me, you know, what should I write, or what is it that you're looking for? Because they want to do it well in service to you, because they know that you're doing it for a reason. So they're a little stuck, like, I don't even know what to write. So then you can guide them and say, here are a couple of examples of what others have said, or here are some things I remember about our work together that might help you. So you can literally just kind of put this all in front of them and help them write something successful for you in that way. But asking a simple email that's personal, and, you know, if you did 3 or 4 of those, you know, every week or every, you know, couple weeks for a short period of time, you'll have enough people jumping in, and you can say, you know, I'm going to be using this on my website and on LinkedIn. Just want to make sure I have your permission to do that. You know, just all that sort of stuff. But asking, again, I get the reluctance, but it's well worth it. And people are so, I can only imagine that the people who've worked with you would be more than happy to write something for you.
Yep. Sandy, I'm right there with you. And this week I wrote my first email, and it was actually fun because I wrote to somebody and showed them 2 other examples of what people wrote. And I started out by saying I was doing my reflection exercise for 2021, and you were one of the wins that I was reflecting on. And, you know, it just was mutually encouraging.
that's a great way to, that's a great, I really, I like how both you and Rob phrase it in a very giving way, and that it's a win for everyone. That's really nice. I think we should have a mastermind on this. This is good stuff. Asking
Noted.
for favors. I always see it as a favor. It's super awkward. So this is,
Well, that's actually how I phrase it sometimes. Like, can I ask you a small favor? And I get, you know, we're all busy, and I know this. So if I could just have, you know, 10 minutes, if you could take 10 minutes and do this, it also puts it in a box to say, you know, you don't have to spend a lot of time on this. 3 or 4 sentences, examples, like Annette said. But also, you know, when I think about my favorite clients, or the people that I worked with the most, that really light me up, or that are my wins, as Annette was saying, you came to mind. And It's
That's
an
really
honor
good.
to ask. It's an honor to be asked, honestly.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
See, I think we need regular encouragement. And when I think about a lot of us sitting around in a circle, I would say we probably need regular encouragement to do that, because I think you're likely to just kind of float back to the default setting. So this should be a regular thing that we talk about.
The topic for Monday is networking. I think this falls into that category.
Okay.
So I'm going to make sure that we address some of those things. I think you're spot on. Thank you, Annette.
Yeah. And I can see a lot of nodding heads, so I think we all can relate to the discomfort of this. So even if we did maybe one of our co-working sessions too, where we just said, for anyone who wants to, Rob's going to give us some good verbiage to encourage us. It's
Me on the spot.
motivate us to get out of our
Everything I say will
comfort
be
zone.
bad advice.
Right. And then he's going to go work on something else.
Right.
Oh, all right. Well, we're down to the accomplishments section. And, you know, BJ was not too, he said people tend to skim past this at this point. I again fill it out because it's like memories of things I've worked on where I can easily come up with a quick case study. If I remind myself of that, I can say, oh, I actually have a scenario that was very similar to what you're talking about. Let's scroll down to my publications section, click on this example. And the one that I pop out with a lot is this environmental handbook for the graphic arts, because I worked with the DEQ on that. And so that gives a lot of validation to the market that I'm talking to. But again, to Anna's point about where do you put stuff, you can also have duplicate information here. So you might have a certificate up above, and then it might be a project, or it might be an award or something. So because this compresses so nicely, each of these things, if you click on them, will expand out. But I think this is kind of a cool section. It's kind of tight and looks good. So I would throw a lot of stuff in here, and then you've just got it if you need it. And certainly being able to guide someone to a place on your profile and say, let's just click on this and go over some of the lessons that I've learned from that.
Sandy?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Mark. I just kind of reflecting on some of the things that you're going through, and I guess some of my experiences. That, you know, it seems like, and I'm not saying it's wrong or anything, but BJ just seems to be trying to keep your profile to a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the reflection I have on that is, well, you're saying you've got 40 years of experience, but if you don't have all this stuff in there, then I mean, there's no substance
Proof.
to what you said about your 40 years. I mean,
That's a good point.
plus you talked about, and I agree, a lot of the marketing, you want to focus on a specific market, but that actually allows you to expand, because a lot of other people will find you once you become that expert.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I see a lot of these things, if somebody's doing a search, those are things going to bring you up in their search. So I'm not, like I said, I'm not, it's just a reflection.
Yeah.
I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, you know, hey, that's what I would think about when I was putting mine together.
Right. Well, I looked at the profiles that he sent me as an example, and they're very streamlined. It's a lot of white space. It's designed to convert. And I can understand that. It's really just, what do I do for you? Do I have the credentials to do it? Next steps, let's get rolling. But also, yeah, like you say, it's like, I want to show also the, I think in a way, this also gives potential clients a chance to see what they can expect when they work with me. And it's almost like a filtering mechanism. Nobody's going to be surprised if I start working with someone and I start kicking their ass a little bit. They're they're not going to go, oh, I didn't think it was going to be hard. It's like, oh, well, look at my life. You're going to see that I'm going to make you work a little bit here. So to that extent, I think it's good. And one of the other points he made was I had Spanish down as a language that I'm proficient in. And it doesn't really show unless you click on it what level of proficiency you are. It just said Spanish. So he started speaking Spanish to me, and I replied to him, and he said, you know, unless you're fluent, I wouldn't bother to put it in there. So he said, what's the point that you took Spanish in college? So so I ended up taking that out, even though I'm proficient, but I wouldn't probably not work with a client who only spoke Spanish. So and then down here, you know, under interests, this is kind of this can be a tricky place. LinkedIn decides what it's going to display down here, and it's part of the groups that you belong to, the people who you follow. And, you know, everybody under the sun who has a company is going to ask you to follow them. And I usually follow somebody for a while and then I just unfollow them just to be nice. But this is a reflection of you. And so, you know, if you have like your, you know, we are neo-Nazi group that you belong to, anything negative that you are following or belong to can potentially be rotated through here as a reflection of what your interests are. So anything that you really, you know, if you're in a group and it's not performing, for example, just leave the group. You know, let's say it's very spammy there hasn't been a lot of activity. Or you're following someone because they're your friend, but it's not, doesn't really reflect your beliefs or your values or whatever. I mean, I would just be pretty rigorous about who you follow and why. And it would be one thing if you could control which 6 items are displayed here, but you can't. So I probably once a month go through and unfollow pretty much anything that's not performing for me. And then this last section is the one that we just talked about, which is the causes. And so that's the little cherry on top for people who scroll to the bottom of your profile. So that's what I got for you. Does anybody have any questions or input?
Thank you enough. First of all, thank you so much for putting the time and effort into this and sharing it all with us. Yeah, I hope we can do more of this stuff. People coming and sharing, you know, whether it's their own expertise or expertise that they've learned by attending a class or course or something that adds some richness and perspective. This is great. This is super helpful. So thank you. That's a fantastic job.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Cindy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sandy. I know you mentioned Canva, and I just was wanting to tell everybody I've used that a lot. So if anybody needs a little tutoring in that, they can get in touch with me and we can do you know what I mean? I can kind of walk you through. So I like it. It's very user-friendly, and I do really appreciate all this good information, Sandy, and taking the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is LinkedIn as I had never perceived it before.
Well, Gordon,
especially
for you, I mean, you know, I don't know where you are with your consulting work, but, you know, I feel like the older I get, the more I just want a couple of really great clients who are going to stick with me. And I don't want to fool around with a lot of messy situations. So it's really nice to talk to the people who, you know, are like, they can select themselves out if they read this and they say, you know, and I don't put my politics out or anything like that, but really, I don't want to work with jerks. I don't want to work with crazy people. I just want to work with nice, respectful, you know,
Yeah.
so.
I don't say it to people I'm meeting with necessarily, but I just don't work with people I don't like.
Yeah,
I figure at this stage in my life, I mean, I want to grow my business. And so right now I'm at the seed stage, maybe the pre-casting of the seed stage of my business, but I'm unwilling to work with jerks and obnoxious, pushy, yell at me people. I'm just not going to do that. And so I actually just was removing some of the interests on this list because I went, how did that even get on there? I don't want anyone to think I'm interested in this. This is horrifying.
good, good. Well, I'm glad you had a good takeaway. It's funny, during our team meetings, each of my clients, we get together for, you know, like a group hug every month. And one of them, we chant, no assholes, no assholes. So we have our no asshole policy. And, you know, you would think you don't need that reminder, but money gets dangled in front of you and you think, well, I'll make an exception this one time.
It's
And
just a short time. It won't be long.
gosh, right, exactly. I'll just, hold on, I need a drink of water.
That's you.
What happens when I shout no asshole? I lose my voice. But we worked with someone last summer, and I know some of you've heard this story before, but so the two consultants started doing the work on the financials and so forth, and they said, well, we want you to have a conversation because you have really good intuition about whether I'm like the asshole sensor or something, I don't know. So I talk with this guy and I come back and I go, yeah, he's an asshole, you guys. And they're like, oh, but he paid us $25,000. And I'm like, all right, well, let's do this phase and then nothing else. And so we got through that phase, everything went fine. Sometimes it doesn't. And the client was very happy with what we produced. And that went over the course of the summer. And then in the fall, we just got together and we were like, we have to remind ourselves, because we were walking on eggshells the whole time, that the whole thing would blow up. Because, you know, people who, especially when you're consulting with people, you just really don't need that extra layer of risk. So it's better if you start with good-hearted people. But Anna, you were going to say something.
Well, no, I was curious because sometimes you don't know they're going to be assholes. I mean, from a social standpoint, they seem really nice, and it's not until you work with them that it's like, okay, we don't have the same business ethics. And also sometimes some folks, oh, maybe you just have a better sensor. Some folks are slightly out there, and maybe I'm just normally pretty conservative. And so it seems like, do I expand my range of comfort in getting to know people and working with them? I don't know. Maybe I just don't have as good.
No, I think really, I mean, one of the things when I started my business and I was like, I'll work with anybody, pretty quickly, what I decided to do was my sales process was to get them into a project where I could work with them for a short period of time and get a feel for them without there being some huge commitment. So it's nice from a sales standpoint because you're selling something that's low risk, and it's low risk for you, it's low risk for them. And you actually find out a lot of things like, do they pay their bills on time? Do they respect what I'm trying to bring to this relationship? Do they foist me onto their assistant every time I have a question? I mean, there's so many just kind of logistical things that you can find out. So almost always, that's how I try to start a client relationship. And when I don't, I regret it. So I think, you know, that's also part of the thing, you know, as if you're in the process of building your business, those are some things definitely to look at in terms of what does the initial engagement look like? How can I control that? Where are the escape valves? And building that also into your terms and conditions. So, you know, in my terms and conditions, I allow either the client or I to cancel at any time with no penalty. And everybody has to generally prepays, so I'm not ever out any money. I might be out, say, a week or 2 weeks of my time, but I feel like that's worth it to not be locked into being stuck with somebody that's not a good fit for me. So it is nice to have those, whether you call them projects or engagements, in kind of your menu of services that allow you to open the door to someone partially and then be able to scoot them out quickly if necessary.
I think that,
Great idea.
I don't know, we talk a lot about it at AHB, but you know, having multiple other not clients, but colleagues in your same industry to do, you know, I mean, you're not really competing with each other because everybody has a different style of client that they like to work with. You know, and sometimes it is a personality issue
Right.
between the two of you. So,
Oh, like you mean being able to recommend that they work with one of your
yeah,
colleagues
so if you
instead?
run into
Yeah.
somebody like that, now you've got other colleagues, and you're like, hey, you know, we're just not getting along, or you know, this isn't working for me. You know, would you mind taking this person on?
So
Or-
Mark, is this why all these assholes have been calling me, is because you've been sending them over to me?
well, you've got the filter, you know. So-
Right.
Oh, yeah, you
too
got to
funny.
talk to your colleagues about, you know, the actual recommendation, but I just,
No, that's true. And in fact, you know, when I was building my business, I actually prided myself in being able to work with quote unquote difficult people. And but I think being able to say what difficult means is different for every person. And so for me, I wouldn't want to work with a mean person, but I would definitely work with someone who's would be considered difficult in another scenario. So like I have a client who is very emotional and can get upset by things easily. That doesn't bother me at all. I feel like I'm a very calming person or whatever. So, you know, someone else might consider that difficult. To me, it's just like no big deal. You know, we can do this. So
Right. Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of autistic young adults, and you know, some people just don't have the understanding of their mindset and stuff, whereas I do. So, you know, it's just, I think, but you know, I think Gordon was right. Is, you know, for, you know, just the flat out abusive people, we're all kind of too old to be doing that.
Yeah.
Now, how did you, when you're starting out, especially, how did you encourage or present getting a retainer before you started?
You know, I think, you know, this would be a really good one to have a whole session on. I'd like to talk about pricing, retainers, getting paid upfront. Because, you know, when Rob was talking about how to phrase things when you're asking for a testimonial and that comfort zone issue, and then I heard him say it and I was like, oh, I could say that. If Rob wrote down how to ask for a testimonial and I practiced saying it a couple times, I could say that. And I think it's the same thing with asking for money up front or proposing a retainer, that, again, we come to these things with our own experience. And I, being a very cheap person, would have a hard time paying for something that I didn't know was going to either, like, how do I know this is going to work? Or how do I know this is going to be of value? But when you put yourself in, say, a print company owner's standpoint, it's like they're going to pay for the convenience of having me get rolling right away. Someone else has validated that I'm worth the money that I say I am. They have controls within their own corporation and legal department and accounting department that if this goes bad, there's some sanctions that I'm aware of, they're aware of, you know, so there's pretty little risk on their part that it's going to go bad. And so knowing how to spin it to that person. And, you know, I think of some of the more challenging places that you might encounter, which would be maybe if you're working with an agency or a educational institution or something where they're like, no, we don't pay retainers, or we don't pay up front, or, you know, you're going to do a project and then you're going to wait 90 days for your check. So, I mean, those would be things that we could talk about, how to frame your business so that you are the kind of vendor that can get paid on the terms that you want.
Yes, I think that's a good topic, including how to follow up on a client who isn't paying.
Right, yeah. And, you know, I ran a printing magazine for years. And so I think our bad debt was like 1%. It was just pretty much negligible. That's just, it's below the risk of just doing business. Should have been actually higher, but that is one of the things that it's, again, one of those practiced elements of how and when to collect debt before it becomes uncollectible.
Yeah, there's a
I've
lot.
always been surprised at the lack of pushback that I get when asking for a retainer. It's almost never been an issue, and I always I'm doing web development, and I typically ask for 50% as a retainer.
Yeah, and I
just
think
put it in the proposal.
Yeah, there's categories where people don't, and that's again one of those things where, as a vendor, if you put yourself in a different kind of category, nobody even thinks twice about either a payment up front, a deposit, or a monthly payment or whatever. And so we could talk about some of those things, but Greg's right. Almost always, if I'm working on a website project, not only can I ask for more upfront, but, you know, just timeline deliverables, all those things just go into a completely different category. So
yeah, you're very experienced. So you've done the service that you've provided many times before. So they're probably comfortable of, oh yeah.
And you can lay, I think when you lay out what the process is going to be very clearly, that gives them more confidence as well.
Because you already have a plan ahead of time and you're leading them through it. That makes
Right.
sense.
And sometimes if it's a larger project or a larger amount, then the payments get tied to those milestones, but it's always after that initial retainer
deposit, right?
And
yeah.
To your point, Greg, you know, you're talking about laying out the project, but even being confident enough to say, this is how I do business, this is how I work, this is how payment. So, you know, it's a little different with coaching or whatever, but still, so how does this work? Well, this is how it works. You know,
Yeah.
You make this payment, then this happens, then this happens, and we have these calls. And to your point about being confident, when I just say that, that's how it is. If that is objectionable, then we're not going to work together. It's kind of, there's not much room for negotiation there. But I think part of it is just having a clear understanding yourself of how you want to get paid, need to get paid in order to deliver the services first and foremost, as well as tying it, to your point, Greg, to the project. I think is super, super helpful. But that confidence in both sides of, here's how the project generally works, here's how I get paid, here's how we work together.
Yeah, I think people also get nervous about deliverables. And I think they get nervous about being locked into a process, especially if you're a creative person. You think, well, I don't want to have to do it the same each time. But to your point, Rob, which is, you know, and I'm sure with your relationships with your clients, things have to iterate in different ways as it flows. And maybe sometimes people want to see you more often or whatever, but there's still kind of a standard operating procedure that guides how you work together. And I always tell people, if things change, we can revisit this. But for now, this is the structure that I work within, and I know being able to tell people it's a proven process, people have success with this, I think is reassuring for most customers, if they know you've got a way that, that you're not just winging it. And even if you're just starting out in your business, being able to create either that first low risk project, getting that really nailed down, or the first part of your sales process that gets somebody to work with you, really get that process refined and predictable, and the asking for payment part and the discussing money part. And I also tell people, like, don't wait until someone's ready to sign on the line to talk about money. Just get that conversation out there right away, because not only it's good practice for you for one thing, but also you really find that, again, those old tapes that we have about what our value is or what we would pay for. And, you ask somebody, well, what were you expecting to pay for this kind of service? And they mention an amount that's just like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to create value around a number that I can't even relate to. But what a great stretching exercise for yourself to say, oh, somebody thinks I'm worth such and such, and now I can build either a service or a relationship around that, and keep elevating your business.
And I think that's
Totally.
part of one of my issues is I think, well, geez, anyone can do what I do, which they could with enough Googling and practicing and figuring stuff out. They could. What an element of what I provide is I can short circuit hundreds of hours of Googling.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing you have to be mindful of is that they don't want to do all that Googling.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And they also don't know how to interpret what they're reading. I mean,
Yeah.
that's one of the things also, the more kind of high level strategy, and you work with someone and they say, that part just never occurred to me. We could read the same paragraph and I would have an interpretation of it and they would have an interpretation of it. And so, I would love to keep having these conversations in Owner Insider about our value and how we express that, and what we do, how we differentiate ourselves, and how we we need to be reminded how special we are. And I can just tell from how you convey yourself, Gordon, that like you're the kind of person I would love to have on my side. I mean, anyone who had a conversation with you and said, oh, I just talked to someone and they really stressed me out, but I talked to Gordon and I felt very comfortable that he would be able to help guide me in my business in a way that I could internalize. So I think there's a lot of elements to what we do that aren't just what we know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Speaking to that as on the art side of my business, yeah, that's very hard because people have no idea how long it takes to create what they're asking you to create, and they don't get that. I had a person contact me through my art website and so I love this. Would you do something of me and my partner, and what would it cost? And so I threw out a price. I haven't heard back from them, but I thought I had to say at least this amount, and that was just a possibility. And I said, I can't until we actually talk and I see what you want me to do, blah, blah, blah. But people have no idea most of the time how long it takes for any of us to do. They know they don't want to do it, but often they don't have an appreciation of the time and the talents and all that we've already put into our businesses to do that. So, but I struggle with that, giving out a price.
Yeah.
it's so beyond even the time it takes, I think, because the result, whether it's your art, there's, we've spent money on art that I was like, I can't believe we just did that, but we did it. But it's, I don't miss any of the dollars, and I get to enjoy this piece for for the rest of my life. My kids walk by it, I walk by it. It's something that brings me joy. And that, it's cliche to say you can't put a price on that. You can put a price on it, but it's like the result of what you're getting. Like if you fast forward and I've delivered this beautiful painting for you. Are you going to miss the amount that I just quoted you, or are you going to be appreciating what you're staring at for decades? And the same with, I've, coaching clients have my business coach, that we coach each other. We've been working together for 9-10 years now. And people have said to me, well, gosh, I don't pay my lawyer as much as you charge. And I said, well, your lawyer, protects your business in various ways. I'm helping you to create money. So there's a very different deliverable here in coaching, right? I'm going to help you actually create money for your business and grow your business. They're just saving your butt. Both are different skills, both are worth it, but the comparison's a little off. It's a very different result. Both are
Your
valuable.
lawyer is a cost center.
Yeah.
Right.
Your
I always
coaching is a profit center.
I've heard that pushback too, and I always just say, what kind of crappy lawyer do you have that charges less than I do?
I have to jump. This has been great, and I've taken a ton of notes on future ideas and calls as well. So I'm super excited because I was actually just having a call with my coach that I referenced today about some of the plans for this year and things that I wanted to bring in. And you beat me to the punch, because this sort of thing is exactly what was on the list.
Nice.
So, bringing in other opportunities for people to share skills, whether they're related to what you do or not, something that's of value to the group is fantastic. So thank you, Sandy.
Absolutely. And I'm really happy that everybody showed up. If anyone wants to, I know Rob leaving isn't necessarily the death knell here, but if anyone wants to, I know, if anyone else wants to talk about your specific businesses, or I've got some time here and we're on the topic anyway. So
I think this has been great. Sandy, thank you so much for tagging me on this.
Yeah.
As well, because Gordon, because I think about what could I do in value. I also think about how many restaurants there are out there. You can cook yourself dinner, but do you really want to do it? Or I usually people buy burgers. Can't you make out your own burger at home? I mean, it's just personally, I don't buy things as I can make scrambled eggs at home. Something that takes forever to make, yeah, I'm gonna go buy that. But I mean, not everyone has that mentality, right? I mean, there's somebody to think about just even burgers, or it drives me when people order something like grilled cheese. I'm like, can't you?
I know. Or you look at when you say eggs, you go out for breakfast with someone and you get 2 eggs, a piece of toast, a piece of bacon, and coffee. And it's $2 worth of ingredients. And you just paid $12 for breakfast. And you just are I have to stop looking at it that way, but that's how my mind works.
Well, yeah, there's still for some reason I need to get over the cost of hiring someone to clean my house. Because you can do it at any time, but really, do you really want to do? But I also live in Silicon Valley, right? So my tiny little 1,300 square foot house is going to cost me at least $160 just for regular cleaning. So
yeah.
But there is something about Cindy, you brought up an interesting point, is about value. Of providing value to your clients, because they need to think of it as the service or product that you're providing is more than what you're paying for it. So when your clients hire you, do you have a sense of how they value? I mean, are they valuing, especially since art is not like, you know, I'm avoiding cooking or something like that. It's a very judgmental
Yeah,
thing.
subjective.
Thank you, subjective.
Yeah, and then that's the hard part about art. I mean, those who end up buying it can see what, like Rob was talking about, that I'm going to walk past this, you know what I mean, every day and get to enjoy this for the rest of my life. And those who walk by and go, oh, you know, or they want to know all about it, and they're interested in it, but they won't lay out the money. And so, you know, so art wise, you know, some people buy this is art wise, buy it. They don't even know who I am. The piece speaks to them, and they buy it. And that's the hard part about art. What I do kind of engages people because there's usually a story behind the collage that I do, or people stand in front of it and tell their own stories, you know, based on their reaction to the piece. When I get commissions, it's usually from people who have seen my work. They like it. You know, they're buying in already. And they say, can you use that kind of style and do it for this person? Or, you know, can you work with me? And we work collaboratively, but they're asking for my style. I do mixed media collage. So they want that style, but they wanted a different person or a different subject matter or something like that. So sometimes that's a little harder than, you know, maybe if you're doing a website or something, because it's easier,
Well, yeah,
you know, to describe, you know, the outcome and the benefits of letting someone else do that for you. Art is all about really extra income that people have or believe that they have that they can spend on that kind of thing.
That's an
So that's
interesting.
why I can't pay my bills with my art.
Well, one thing I think is really helpful when you're a creative person and you're trying not to box yourself in on a project is to give people a range. And so something that you might say is, normally for a project like that, I charge between $25,000 and $35,000. The last person who commissioned a work similar to this paid me $45,000. And then they have an idea of whether they need to pursue the conversation with you or not. And also, when you were saying you haven't heard from the person, that also gives you more power to follow up, because basically you're, you know, setting the scene for them. So if they, and then you say, but the last person paid 45,000, is that in your price range, or is that what you were thinking? And so they say, well, we were really hoping for something under 20,000. And then you say, well, let's see how my schedule goes. How about I follow up with you the first week of February and see what you're thinking? That gives them a chance to see if they can justify $45,000, because a lot of times they will if you put it back on them. They want something, now they just have to reframe what their expectations are. So I like to give some people some time to percolate on that. And then when you do follow up with them February 1st, they're, you know, again, this is part of that whole dance of how you negotiate with someone. But let's say they say, Cindy, we just love your work, but we really want to keep it under 20,000. And they're putting the ball back in your court, and you can just say, you know what, I'm going to take the commissions that I have. And if it turns out at the end of the year, I've got some extra time, I'll get back to you if I feel like I can do it for that amount. And I am very honored that you love my artwork, and I'd like to stay in touch with you. And I'll, you know, you can expect to hear from me in the fall sometime. Again, now, you know, or you can say, I've thought about it and I think I can do a piece for under 20,000, but again, when you're negotiating, you're going to make them concede, because you're not just going to say, oh, all right, I'll change my mind, but you're going to say, well, here's the new situation. I'm going to have 6 clients sit in a room and I'm going to do 6 pieces all at the same time. And you're going to suffer for having to be so bold to ask for it to be half the price. So yeah, there's a lot of different ways to handle that. But I think that's one of the things when you're standing up for your value and for your pricing, is that you give people a chance to mentally get on board with what you consider to be your value, instead of just automatically reducing your price.
Yeah, and Sandy and I've had a bit of a conversation about value pricing and trying to arrive at that number. That conversation still needs to keep going. But one of the things that I do is to give someone an idea of what it will cost to do what they have just asked me to do. And if that number is higher than they're able to pay, well, we can adjust what it is that they're asking me to do.
Right.
Not I'll do that for less, but I'll do less, and therefore the price will come down.
Right.
Yeah, I'm totally agree. You at least reduce the scope, but not reduce the value of your work.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's probably a little bit harder on the creative side, which is why I feel like it's really
Yeah,
important to learn
definitely.
how to stand up for your value, because the people don't realize that even with what Greg does, you know, it may seem very straightforward that you're going through these steps, but the amount of time it takes to think about what the client needs and be creative in that regard, whether the project's big or small, it basically takes the same amount of time. And that's why you really have to learn how to defend your value.
Yeah, one of the biggest red flags that I try and avoid is the person who says, well, this is going to be easy. or even worse is, well, okay, this can't be that hard. So
yeah, I like it when clients tell me this should only take an hour. It's like nothing takes an hour. I can't even turn on my computer for an hour.
Well, I think
and
it's important too.
I'm going to need to go. So
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. This has been really good, and I love having these conversations sort of on the side, and I'm sure it's going to get folded into the general insider process, which I think is just great.
Very good. Thanks for showing up, Greg. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right. We'll see you all later.
So thank you so much. This, as I say, LinkedIn as a business action. Whoever thought? So,
I know. Making the machine bend, like we were saying in our little thread there, bend that machine to your will and make it perform for you.
Yes.
Sandy, how often do you then post now that you've set up this like beautiful?
I don't post status updates really much at all. When I first got on LinkedIn back in 2007, I was very busy on it, and the amount of time replying and so forth was onerous. But I do comment on other people's posts quite a bit. And then my partner and I just moved a Twitter chat, a 10-year Twitter chat. We moved it from Twitter over to LinkedIn. And so I will be having to be on LinkedIn more in that regard, but still, as a rule, I would say post often enough so that someone can, if they want to interact with you, again, giving people something to engage with, that there's something somewhat fresh there that they can comment on, because there's nothing worse than looking at someone's activity and seeing like 9 months ago. You can't interact with anyone. It's you look bad, they look bad. So I would say, you know, at least every couple weeks, have something that someone can interact with.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully I can manage that. You know, I was
Yeah.
thinking once a week, and twice a week's even better.
Right.
You know, as I'm doing my newsletter weekly and that kind of stuff, but then.
Yeah.
All
And
right.
also one of the things I think is also really nice is, we have a tendency to try and overthink or, just aim super high in what we share. But sometimes just something really easy that, again, is very low risk for somebody to comment on, where they're not exposing themselves, or they're not, oh, I didn't, they're like, I don't want to go read a link. I don't want to judge something. I just want someone to say something and I can say whether I agree with it or not. So, you can just say,
Short thing.
yeah,
Okay.
for example, for you, Cindy, you could say, this morning while I was making my coffee, I was really thinking back to how much fun I had teaching the classes at the conference, and here's my top 3 takeaways that really gave me joy about teaching. 1, 2, 3, and then you could say, what do you guys love about your job the best? And then people can either comment on what you said about your joy, or they can add their joy. And it's just, nobody has to worry that there's a trap in there.
Right. Wow, that's great.
And I would keep it to under 200 words. I create these little mini updates for my client. Basically, I just create a Google sheet, and we'll have, say, 10 of them that can be pushed out once a week or whatever. And they're just very, it might be, he's very active in his church, and it might be a conversation that he had with somebody, or it might be, he took a walk and he noticed something and it gave him it triggered an idea, and we just put him in this little document and he can pop them in. And it also helps him to see when his target market is active on LinkedIn. So when you're creating content like that and you notice, oh my gosh, everybody seems to be on LinkedIn at 7 a.m. on Thursdays. Well, yes, they are. And then you wonder why it's like a ghost town at 5 p.m. And I noticed this actually because, being on the West Coast, I always think, gosh, it's really quiet in a certain place. And then I'll get up an hour earlier and it's like, oh no, there's all kinds of conversations going. I'm not hitting it at the right time. So those are the opportunities that you have to, test some of that stuff.
Right. Okay. Wow. Thank you.
This has been great.
I just want to give you a big hug.
I'll give you a high five. How's
High
that?
five.
Woohoo! Thank you so much, Sandy.
Well,
It's
thank you
nice
so
to
much
meet
for
you.
coming. It's nice hanging out with everybody, and you guys are always, it's really fun, as we all know, when you work mostly by yourself, to just hang out with people. So
Yes, I agree.
yeah, but my goal this year is to kick Anna's butt and get her business like going and rolling, and she can jettison all her 9,000 MBAs and just like focus on her.
Anna, what is it? What is your business?
Okay, so I have to decide whether or not to have a business versus getting hired.
See?
For one thing. So my last role was as a chief financial officer for a health tech startup. And I'm just tired of doing finance and tired of people who don't understand the value of it, and they don't want to pay for it, and they don't care. And here I'm thinking, I'm trying to plan their finances so the goal of the finance is actually to reach your dreams and to figure out how to do it financially. I'm getting tired of like trying to convince people that there's some value to that. But on the flip side, because of the pandemic, we've had some losses in our family, and it kind of just triggered of like, I really should be doing stuff that I would have more meaning and value, and that would be having more direct impact in helping people, especially in a basic way. So I've also taken a lot of some product management courses, and I've also last year I was certified as a Tiny Habits coach, which really I took out of it is I like to understand behavior and changes of behavior and use that to create products. But it's like, can I do that without getting another degree? I mean, that would be nice. How can I leverage my background? And how can I, actually, one of the questions I thought of is, since I am changing to another role, I don't want to get like a user, I could become a user UX person, user experience person, but then I wouldn't be able to compete with people who've been doing UX for a long time, and I wouldn't be leveraging my background. So on my LinkedIn, it's like, well, how much do I put of, well, I'll probably put my financial background, right? Because that's what I've been doing. But then do I put some of my teaching background, or like I've created content before. Hey, stop, dude. Sorry, little dude. Little dude is not happy that he has not gotten his walk yet. That's why he's so sorry about that here. Oh, little dude, say hi. Hi, little dude.
Oh,
Yeah.
How adorable.
And he gets away with a lot for being adorable too.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
Dude, go get walk. Okay. So yeah. But Sandy, you're so kind to help me, because I'm just like, I feel embarrassed for not knowing what I want clearly, and it drives me bonkers because I'm more of a, give me a goal and I'll figure out how to get there, but I have to figure out what my goal is.
yeah.
You have to give
Well,
your
and
own.
I think, when you have lots of different pieces that you can put into a business and you keep putting that puzzle together and it doesn't look like the picture you imagined, and you're like, I know all the pieces are here. Why is this not, doesn't this look like the beautiful picture on the box? And I feel like with the skills that you have and your background and your credentials and your personality, there's a beautiful picture waiting for you. You just haven't put the pieces together in the right way yet.
That's very kind of you. I like that. I like that picture versus like, she doesn't know what she's doing. I was like, I just turned like,
No, I see great things for you. So, yeah.
That's very kind. That's very kind. Oh, and it's fun to see everyone here too.
Yep. I know you have to go walk the dog, and Cindy probably has to go reply to those people and say, are we ready to do that $45,000 commissioned artwork yet?
Right. Thanks so much. It's
Yes.
been great hanging out with you gals.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great to see y'all. All
And
right.
thank you to Mark for